In early 2003, a team of German archaeologists working in Iraq made one of the most significant discoveries of modern times. Deeply buried beneath the desert sands, they stumbled upon what they believed to be the long-lost tomb of the legendary King Gilgamesh, the protagonist of the oldest story ever written by humans. For centuries, historians had been divided over the actual existence of Gilgamesh, as the epic described him as a giant standing at 5 meters tall, a cross between a normal human and a Mesopotamian goddess. For this reason, it was generally accepted that the story of Gilgamesh was merely a myth. That was until Georg Fassbinder and his team of archaeologists, using modern technology to peer deep into the ground, discovered an entire ancient city beneath the desert, remarkably laid out much like the city of Uruk over which Gilgamesh was purported to have ruled. There were houses, gardens, fields, and an incredibly sophisticated canal system, leading archaeologists to describe the site as the Venice of the desert. What's even more significant is that on the outskirts of the ancient city, there appeared to be a burial site that archaeologists believed to be the tomb of the ancient king. As Georg Fassbinder put it, "I don't want to say for certain that it was Gilgamesh's tomb, but it bears a striking resemblance to the one described in the epic." What was Georg Fassbinder trying to tell us? If Gilgamesh's tomb resembled the one described in the epic, does this mean that Fassbinder and his team had discovered a tomb containing the remains of a 5-meter-tall giant? It was truly a breathtaking discovery, a long-lost piece of human history. Surely, archaeologists believed that this would change everything, revealing secrets we didn't even know we had lost. But then the unthinkable happened. Just a few weeks after the discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb, the United States invaded Iraq, forcing Georg Fassbinder and his team to abandon their work and flee the country. The mystery remained unresolved. Where was it? In 1849, an English historian and archaeologist named Austin Henry Layard made a discovery that would alter history within the ruins of the Assyrian king Assurbanipal's library from the 7th century BCE in northern Iraq, considered one of the oldest libraries in human history. There, he uncovered an ancient clay tablet dating back thousands of years, covered in a peculiar script he couldn't read. Who had written this script, Layard wondered, and what did it say? As incredible as the discovery was, it was only the beginning. In the early 1850s, over 15,000 similar tablet fragments covered in the same mysterious script were found at the site. These tablets were sent to the British Museum, where for decades, scholars attempted to decipher them by using other ancient tablets written in languages they could understand, working backward to attempt a translation. The breakthrough finally occurred in the 1870s thanks to a man named George Smith, born in 1840. Smith left school at the age of 14 and began working as a banknote engraver. Although he lacked formal education, he became fascinated by reports from Iraq about undecipherable artifacts older than anything ever discovered. Driven by curiosity, Smith started visiting the British Museum during his lunch breaks and free time to study these collections independently. He slowly taught himself ancient languages and familiarized himself with ancient scripts. In 1866, the museum staff finally noticed the peculiar young man who frequented their archives, so they offered him a job as a translator. They told him he could start with the 15,000 fragments found by Austin Henry Layard. For years, Smith worked diligently until the words written on the tablets began to reveal themselves. When they did, Smith was shocked to find the basis of an incredible story. There, on the tablets, was an account of an ancient flood, a deluge that wiped out humanity except for one man and his family. When Smith presented his findings to the Society of Biblical Archaeology in 1872, an event attended even by the British Prime Minister, it sent shockwaves around the world. Many scholars and theologians proclaimed that this ancient flood story confirmed the truth of the Noah's Ark story in the Bible. In 1875, Smith went even further by publishing complete translations of everything he had discovered. Although he didn't know it at the time, he had started translating the oldest story ever written, a legendary tale that would simply become known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. Tragically, Smith died suddenly in 1876 at the age of only 36. But this wasn't the end of what he had begun. For decades and generations, even to this day, scholars have continued Smith's work, translating more and more tablets, slowly revealing the entire story of the epic. In its entirety, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells the fantastic story of the ancient Mesopotamian king named Gilgamesh, who ruled the region of present-day Iraq for several millennia in the past. It describes his early days as a tyrant and how the gods sought to teach him a lesson by creating a rival named Enkidu. After the two men fought to a standstill, they became great friends and embarked on a series of adventures detailed in the epic. When Enkidu died, Gilgamesh, in despair, spent the rest of his life searching for the secrets of eternal life, another series of adventures recounted in the epic. It's an incredible written work that, according to scholars, greatly influenced the epic literary genre throughout history, including famous works like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. But what truly captivated people about the story in modern times, as its translation was slowly revealed, was its description of Gilgamesh himself. The astonishing characteristics of the great king were said to be the offspring of a human man and a goddess, making him 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. He stood at a massive 5 meters tall and possessed superhuman strength, endurance, and unusual intelligence. In fact, the story depicted Gilgamesh as unparalleled in all things. There was a passage in the story that said, "He explored everywhere the seats of power. He knew the totality of wisdom in all things." Throughout history, the quest for wisdom has been something that has propelled humans forward. According to the epic, Gilgamesh had reached the end of the labyrinth, obtaining the most advanced knowledge on everything and anything. Taken together, these characteristics of Gilgamesh made the discovery of his tomb in 2003 potentially groundbreaking. Simply put, if archaeologists could uncover his tomb and look inside, imagine what hidden secrets they might find. Was Gilgamesh really a giant, with a tomb housing a 5-meter-tall skeleton? Furthermore, if Gilgamesh's tomb were to be opened, what records of his wisdom on all things could be buried with him? What knowledge did he obtain while seeking the secrets of eternal life? Of course, this is precisely the kind of secret for which people all over the world would go to great lengths to uncover. Over the past 20 years, scholars, historians, and ordinary people have all debated the same question: why did the United States invade Iraq? The country had not been involved in the 9/11 attacks, and the government's official line at the time, suggesting that Iraq and its leader Saddam Hussein were hiding weapons of mass destruction, has since been revealed as a blatant lie. Some have suggested that the US simply wanted to control Iraqi oil, while others even think that President George W. Bush wanted to finish what his father, President George H.W. Bush, had started in the early 90s during the First Gulf War. Could there be another reason, though? Was it perhaps not a coincidence that the invasion was launched almost immediately after the discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb and all its potential secrets? Consider that when the US military invaded the country, they immediately set up a camp around the site of Gilgamesh. In doing so, they expelled scientists and removed local media members who had been sent to cover the discoveries, including prominent figures from ABC News and the BBC. A global news headline instantly disappeared, except that over the weeks and months, strange reports began to emerge from the region. Witnesses claimed to have seen American soldiers digging into the ground and removing materials from the site. If the US military did indeed open Gilgamesh's tomb and extracted items, including the remains of the great king, then the question arises: what secrets were revealed to them, and what happened to what they removed? As the US military took control of Iraq, Gilgamesh's tomb was far from the only site where mysterious and inexplicable things were happening. In the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, stood the legendary National Museum of Iraq, one of the most significant repositories of human history on Earth, filled with ancient manuscripts, statues, coins, and artifacts dating back throughout human history. Surprisingly, and despite a delegation of scientists and historians being warned before the invasion that the museum was the country's most important site, when the US military captured Baghdad, they left the museum unguarded for days. During this time, hordes of citizens stormed the facility and made off with tens of thousands of priceless artifacts. The astonishing negligence of the U.S. military in protecting the museum was strongly condemned by the international community, with the president of the International Council on Monuments declaring it nothing less than a crime against humanity. At least one major media source stated that the looting was akin to the blowing up of Stonehenge. Yet, as the days went by, the story only got worse. Many witnesses reported that even before looters entered the museum, special U.S. military units had come in and taken entire vaults filled with artifacts, loading them onto heavy trucks and disappearing with them. Could this be true, and if so, what were they removing, and where were they taking it? Finally, responding to the outcry from the international community, the U.S. government decided to send a team to investigate the site, composed of specialists from the CIA, FBI, and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The group would be led by Colonel Michael Bogdanos, a Marine commander and lawyer who was also a graduate of Columbia University in classical studies. When the team arrived, they found most of the facility severely damaged. As Bogdanos would later write, it was not a pretty sight. It had been used as a combat position, with Iraqi army uniforms scattered all around, as well as RPGs. In a courtyard covered in hundreds of BAIDH party cards and records of defensive positions, Bogdanos wondered why the Iraqi army had chosen such a sacred site, surely knowing that their fight was in vain. However, there was something else that shocked and disturbed Bogdanos and his team as they ventured deep into the concealed underground chambers of the museum. They discovered that someone else had arrived first, and although some things were clearly missing, the empty boxes and fake artifacts that the museum had stored alongside priceless works to deter thieves remained intact. For Bogdanos, what this meant was evident. It was immediately clear that the thieves knew what they were looking for and where to look. They had been, in his words, organized and selective. Curiously, the thieves seemed to have left behind the most valuable objects, including the world's finest collection of cylinder seals and tens of thousands of ancient pieces of gold and silver. If these were looters who had burst into the underground chambers of the museum, then why hadn't they plundered the most precious items? If they knew what they were seeking, what were they looking for? Some have an answer. In the 1920s, bizarre rumors began to emerge from Iraq, spreading from government to government throughout the corridors of power worldwide. These rumors concerned the discovery of an unfathomable element of advanced ancient technology in the country, said to be called a Stargate, a kind of portal that allowed its users to teleport from one distant place to another. It may sound incredible, but in fact, Iraq was no stranger to such rumors. In the ancient texts of the Sumerians, the region's first inhabitants, stories were told about their interaction with gods called the Anunnaki and how these gods granted wisdom and advanced technology to the Sumerians, thus founding the human race as we know it today. Some believe that these Anunnaki were not gods at all but ancient extraterrestrial visitors who came to Earth several millennia ago. The point, however, is that if Iraq was indeed visited by a group of extraterrestrial visitors called the Anunnaki in ancient times, then the idea that they may have left behind remnants of their advanced extraterrestrial technology seems less implausible. Indeed, the notion that Iraq could possess an ancient Stargate was considered entirely plausible by governments worldwide in the 1920s, leading most major powers to send representatives to the country in search of the lost technology. In fact, some believe that the Anglo-Iraqi War of 1941 was merely a front for a struggle between British and German interests for control of the Stargate. Yet, no Stargate was ever officially found, and slowly, the idea faded from popular view. That was until the 1980s when a new wave of rumors emerged, claiming that Saddam Hussein had rediscovered the Stargate and had actually begun studying it and attempting to make it functional. According to some, by the late 1990s, U.S. officials were concerned that Saddam was indeed on the verge of understanding how the Stargate worked, which would allow him to travel instantly to distant locations and perhaps even contact extraterrestrials and receive their advanced extraterrestrial technology. One serious scholar who believed this was Dr. Michael Salla, an Australian historian and professor at American University in Washington, D.C., who actually wrote an academic paper shortly after the invasion of Iraq stating that control of the Iraqi Stargate was the reason for the war. Could this really be possible? Could an ancient Stargate have been the reason the Iraq War began? Perhaps it goes even further than that. Over a decade before the start of the Iraq War, the US military had clashed with Saddam Hussein during the Gulf War of 1991. It was during this time that an astonishing report was published in the Russian newspaper Pravda, describing an incident that became known as the Iraqi Roswell. According to the report, a Russian colonel who was in Iraq at the time had witnessed the US Air Force shoot down a UFO as it crossed the sky. When he hurried to the crash site, what the colonel found left him stunned. As he described it, the aircraft was round and made of a material he had never seen before. Approximately 1/3 of the craft had been torn away by American missile explosions. The Saudis did not allow us to touch anything, but we managed to see the craft's mechanisms and other things that absolutely bewildered us. It was a relatively small craft, about 4.5 meters in diameter. There were 3 chairs, presumably for the crew members, but they were so small that they appeared to be intended for children. From all appearances, the extraterrestrial beings from space were only about 1 meter tall. However, it seems incredible that there was no corpse at the crash site. Moreover, nothing resembling an engine was found later. Operators from a Saudi radar station told me that no ejection or falling of any objects from the craft had been recorded. Search helicopters inspected the desert, but the pilots found no surviving crew members near the crash site. If the colonel's story was true, then an obvious question arises: where had the craft's pilots gone? Furthermore, where was its engine? Is it possible that these objects were recovered by the Iraqis before Russian, Saudi, or American representatives arrived at the site? If so, what had they done with them? It was only in late 2002 that a caller to an American radio show claiming to be a military insider provided an answer. Iraq had indeed retrieved things from the crash sites, and they were attempting to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology. According to the caller, the US government believed that Saddam's scientists were getting close to a breakthrough and had to be stopped before they achieved it. A few months later, the United States invaded Iraq. Is it possible that this was the true reason for the Iraq War? Could reverse engineering technology have been what the US military removed from the National Museum of Iraq before looters entered? Perhaps weapons of mass destruction were, in fact, a code word for extraterrestrial technology, and the US government was not lying about its intentions after all. Whether this is true or not, the fact remains that Gilgamesh's secrets of universal wisdom, a Stargate, or reverse-engineered extraterrestrial technology, there may be more to the American invasion of Iraq than meets the eye. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, tell us what other mysteries you'd like us to cover in our next video, as we are always open to your suggestions. And that's it for today in our exploration of the mysteries of forgotten civilizations. We hope you've enjoyed this journey through time and space to uncover the fascinating enigmas of these ancient cultures. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss our future discoveries and investigations into the secrets of the past. Who knows what mysteries we'll reveal next time? Stay curious, stay connected, and keep exploring the unknown with us. See you soon for new adventures.